Hey everyone! Today let's talk about one of the most fascinating ruling families in history, the Carolingian Dynasty. This was a family of Frankish nobles who dominated Western and Central Europe during the early Middle Ages, from 751 to 887. Their empire stretched from modern-day France to parts of Italy, Spain, and even Hungary. At its height, the Carolingian Empire was the largest political entity in Europe until the 19th century. The dynasty got its name from their tradition of using the name Charles, a nod to two of their most famous figures, Charles Martel and Charlemagne. Charles Martel, who lived from 688 to 741, is celebrated for his leadership, especially for stopping the Moors' expansion into Gaul at the Battle of Tours in 732. Fast forward a bit, and we have Charlemagne, arguably the dynasty's brightest star. He reigned as king of the Franks from 768 to 814, and was crowned as Holy Roman Emperor in 800. His coronation laid the groundwork for what would later be called the Holy Roman Empire. But the Carolingians didn't have an easy ride. They faced endless challenges, succession disputes, civil wars, and territorial divisions, all of which eventually led to their decline in the mid-9th century. Still, their legacy is massive. The partitions of their empire essentially set the stage for modern countries like France, Germany, and Italy. Now let's go back a bit to understand how they rose to power. Before the Carolingians, there was another dynasty in charge, the Merovingians, who ruled from 458 to 751. They had this massive territory that included Burgundy, Gaul, and parts of Switzerland. But their system of dividing lands among heirs caused constant infighting, and over time, their influence weakened. This opened the door for a group of officials called the mayors of the palace. Think of them like medieval prime ministers, to take over the real power. One of these mayors was Charles Martel's father, Pepin II. After his death, Charles stepped into the role and unified the fragmented regions of Francia. By 737, he was essentially ruling Francia himself, refusing to appoint a new Merovingian king after the death of Theuderic IV. Charles wasn't just about consolidating power. He also worked on spreading Christianity, supporting missionary efforts, and defending the region against external threats. After Charles Martel's death in 741, his sons Pepin the Short and Carloman took over. Carloman eventually stepped down, leaving Pepin to run the show. In 751, Pepin made a bold move. He deposed the last Merovingian king and took the throne for himself, becoming the first Carolingian king. To seal the deal, Pope Zachary crowned him King of the Franks, officially ending Merovingian rule and giving the Carolingians legitimacy. Pepin didn't stop there. In 754, when the Pope needed help against the Lombards, Pepin stepped in, defeated them, and even granted the Pope the province of Ravenna. This act, known as the Donation of Pepin, laid the foundation for the Papal States and strengthened the bond between the Carolingians and the Church. But if Pepin set the stage, it was Charlemagne who truly stole the show. When he took over in 768, he wasn't just content to rule, he wanted to expand. And expand he did, nearly doubling the Frankish kingdom. He conquered Saxony, crushed the Lombards, and extended his reach westward to Barcelona and eastward into Bavaria and beyond. Charlemagne wasn't just about conquest though. He launched what's called the Carolingian Renaissance, a revival of education, religious reform, and cultural development. He standardized church practices, promoted literacy, and supported the creation of texts that influenced medieval Europe for centuries. His relationship with the papacy also reached new heights. In 800, Pope Leo III crowned him as Emperor of the Romans. While the title was symbolic, it gave Charlemagne significant political leverage and cemented the Carolingian Empire's dominance. And after Charlemagne's death, his son Louis the Pious took over the massive Carolingian Empire in 814. Unlike his father, who was a warrior and a strategist, Louis leaned more toward reform and administration. He was committed to strengthening Christian unity and reorganizing the empire. Early in his reign, Louis distributed power across regional kingdoms to his sons and close kin. Instead of creating a centralized state, he opted for what you might call an imperial oversight model, one where the emperor had ultimate authority, but local rulers managed their regions independently. This approach sounded good in theory, but in practice, it planted the seeds of division. By dividing his empire among his sons, Louis unintentionally fueled rivalries and factions, not just within his family but also among the Frankish nobility. This decentralization gradually weakened the imperial throne, paving the way for feudalism, a system where local lords held more power than the central authority. Tensions boiled over in the 830s, when disputes over succession and power sharing escalated into civil wars. Even after Louis the Pious passed away in 840, his sons were at each other's throats. The conflict peaked when Lothar I, the eldest son, tried to claim control of the entire empire. This power struggle ended in 843 with the Treaty of Verdun. The empire was carved into three separate territories. Lothar I got Middle Francia, Louis the German received East Francia, and Charles the Bald ruled West Francia. This division marked a turning point for the Carolingian Dynasty. The unity Charlemagne had worked so hard to create was gone, and the empire was now three distinct kingdoms. While Lothar kept the imperial title, his portion of the empire, Middle Francia, was geographically awkward and difficult to govern, stretching from Italy to the North Sea. Over time, these divisions would evolve into the foundations of modern France, Germany, and Italy, but at the time, they spelled trouble for the dynasty. Each of these new kingdoms faced its challenges. East Francia, under Louis the German, struggled with rebellions, such as the Stellinga uprising in Saxony, and external threats from groups like the Moravians. Middle Francia, after Lothar's death in 855, was further divided among his sons, creating even smaller, weaker kingdoms. This fragmentation left Middle Francia vulnerable, and it became a patchwork of contested territories rather than a unified region. Meanwhile, Charles the Bald faced constant battles in West Francia, including Viking raids and internal conflicts. His reign was marked by struggles with his nephew Pepin II of Aquitaine, who refused to acknowledge his authority, and a drawn-out campaign to secure his rule over Italy. Charles briefly claimed the imperial title in 875, but his power didn't last long. He died in 877, leaving his sons to inherit a fractured kingdom. By the late 9th century, the Carolingian dynasty was losing its grip. Charles the Fat, one of the last notable Carolingians, managed to reunite parts of the empire temporarily, but his reign was short-lived. In 887, he was deposed by his nobles, signaling the dynasty's collapse. From then on, the empire fragmented further, with regional rulers and new dynasties stepping in to fill the void. The Carolingian legacy, though, didn't entirely vanish. Their empire's partitions laid the groundwork for the political and cultural boundaries of modern Europe. East Francia would eventually evolve into Germany, West Francia into France, and Italy remained a battleground for centuries, influenced by the remnants of Carolingian rule. While the dynasty's power waned, its influence on the medieval world and beyond is undeniable.